The signal was not supposed to exist. It came from the edge of known space, from a region already marked as lost. The message was old, broken, and weak, bouncing between dying satellites and shattered relays. Most receivers ignored it. Some systems filtered it out automatically. Others were already dead, but the signal kept repeating. Inside a drifting command station, the last council of the Volari coalition gathered in silence. Their chamber lights were dim. Power was being rationed. Outside the viewport, a blue star burned as debris slowly orbited it, remains of a world that no longer existed. A junior analyst spoke with a shaking voice. The distress call has cycled through every registered power in the galaxy. No one answered at first. They already knew the result. The Devourers were coming. They were not an empire. They did not speak. They did not negotiate. They were ancient machines that stripped planets down to dust, harvested stars, and erased entire species as if cleaning a surface. Every major civilization had tried to stop them. Everyone had failed. The strongest fleets were already gone. The oldest races had retreated into sealed dimensions or vanished into myth. The galaxy was running out of places to hide. The Volari were among the last. The signal was their final act. A council elder leaned forward, her voice heavy. Any replies? The analyst hesitated. None, from the known powers. A quiet despair filled the chamber. Then the analyst swallowed. There is one anomaly. The council turned. The signal reached an unclassified sector. An old archive marker responded to the ping. What marker? The elder asked. The analyst brought up the data. The words appeared in faded script. Soul, 3 classification, Deathworld dominant species, human status, presumed extinct. Several council members made sounds of disbelief. Others laughed softly, the kind of laugh that came when hope was already dead. Humans, one commander said. The violent primitives? They destroyed themselves centuries ago. They never even joined the galactic community, another added. Barely survived their own planet. The elder raised a hand. Then why is this listed as an anomaly? The analyst's hands trembled as he enlarged the display. Because, the archive node replied. Silence fell. That system has been dark for over 300 cycles, the elder said slowly. No transmissions. No traffic. No energy signatures. Yes, the analyst replied. But after receiving the distress signal, it woke me up. Somewhere far away, space shifted. The Devourers were already tearing through the outer defenses of the Volari sector. Entire moons had gone silent within minutes. Civilian evacuation routes were collapsing. Time was measured in hours, not days. The council knew this was pointless. Still, the elder spoke. Send the full message. The analyst hesitated. To the human system? Yes, she said. Beg if you must. The message was sent, raw, emotional, stripped of protocol. We are dying. We are out of time. If anyone still lives, please. Minutes passed. Then hours. The Devourers drew closer. Sensors screamed warnings as the first enemy vanguard entered the system. Black shapes, countless and cold, moved with perfect coordination. The council chamber shook as distant defenses failed. The analyst was about to power down the console when a new signal appeared. Not a reply channel. Not a translation packet. A single burst transmission. Short. Clean. Humans. The words were simple. Message received. The council froze. Before anyone could speak, a second line followed. Hold the line. No species tag. No diplomatic code. No explanation. Just a promise. Long-range sensors suddenly detected movement, far beyond the Devourer front. Deep in a region of space believed to be empty, something massive was emerging. The analyst stared at the data, his voice barely audible. This can't be right. The elder leaned closer. What do you see? The analyst swallowed hard. Energy signatures. Thousands of them. They're not hiding. They're accelerating, straight toward the Devourers. The council looked at the dark stars beyond the viewport. For the first time in many cycles, fear was joined by something else. Not hope, but uncertainty. Because whatever was coming from the human system was not running. The Volari command station trembled again as another defensive ring collapsed. Outside the viewport, space burned. Streaks of light marked dying ships. Entire formations vanished in silent flashes as the Devourers advanced without slowing, without reacting, without emotion. They moved like a tide that could not be reasoned with, only endured until it reached you. Inside the chamber, no one spoke. All eyes were locked on the sensor display. Thousands of energy signatures had appeared far beyond the Devourer vanguard. At first, the readings were dismissed as sensor ghosts, echoes caused by gravitational distortion or dying stars. That happened often near the front lines. But these signals were different. They were organized. They moved together. They're increasing speed, the analyst said quietly. Acceleration curves are aggressive. How aggressive? The elder asked. The analyst hesitated. His mandibles twitched, a sign of deep unease. Beyond standard safety limits. Any known species attempting this would tear their own ships apart. A murmur spread through the chamber. The Volari were not a weak people. They had conquered neighboring systems, built fleets that once inspired fear. But even at their peak, their ships had respected physics, structural limits, biological limits. What was approaching did not seem to care about either. The Devourers noticed. For the first time since entering the system, their formation shifted. Black machine ships altered course, reorienting toward the new threat. Their advance on the Volari slowed, not out of caution, but calculation. The machines had identified a variable. That means they see them as a threat, a commander whispered. Or as prey, another replied. The first human vessels became visible minutes later. At first, they appeared as dark silhouettes against distant starlight. No glowing hulls. No elegant shapes. No ceremonial markings. They were uneven, scarred, and massive, built from layers of reinforced metal, bristling with weapon ports and heat scars that told stories of past battles. They did not match any known design philosophy. Alien warships were often beautiful, symmetrical, designed to impress allies and intimidate rivals. These ships did neither. They looked angry. They're not broadcasting identification, the analyst said. No transponder codes. No diplomatic channels. The elder narrowed her eyes. Are they jamming us? No, the analyst replied slowly. They're just silent. The Devourers moved first. Without warning, a wave of energy lanced through space. It was a weapon that had cracked planets and folded fleets into debris fields. The Volari had lost 3 systems to that same attack. The human fleet did not scatter. They did not dodge. They took the hit head-on. Several ships vanished instantly, torn apart in blinding flashes. The shockwave rippled through space, warping sensor feeds and flooding the chamber with alarms. The Volari gasped. That should have crippled them, a commander said. But the remaining human ships did not slow. They closed distance. They're adjusting formation, the analyst said, disbelief creeping into his voice. Compensating for losses in real time. Another Devourer volley fired. More human ships died. Still, the fleet advanced. They're accepting casualties, the elder said quietly. Yes, the analyst replied. Deliberately. The Volari commanders exchanged uneasy looks. No rational fleet doctrine accepted losses on this scale without retreat. Even the most honor-bound cultures knew when survival demanded withdrawal. The humans did not retreat. As the distance closed, something new appeared on the sensors. They're launching projectiles, the analyst said. Physical ones. Missiles, a commander asked. No, the analyst said slowly. Mass drivers. Kinetic weapons. The chamber fell silent. Kinetic weapons were considered obsolete by most advanced civilizations. Inefficient. Crude. Energy weapons were cleaner, faster, more elegant. But kinetic weapons had one advantage. They did not care about shields. The first impact was catastrophic. A Devourer ship, larger than any Volari battleship, was struck by a dense metal slug moving at a significant fraction of light speed. There was no explosion, just sudden absence. The machine vessel collapsed inward, crushed by its own disrupted mass, then fragmented into useless debris. The Devourer formation faltered. Another impact followed. Then another. The humans did not fire in volleys. They fired with precision. Each shot targeted structural weak points, command nodes, or energy convergence zones that no known species had ever identified. They know where to hit them, the elder whispered. How? A commander demanded. No one knows how those machines are built. The analyst slowly turned his display toward the council. There's something else, he said. Human ships are sharing targeting data across the fleet, but not like a hive mind. What do you mean? It's layered, the analyst replied. Individual command autonomy, but constant data exchange. If one ship learns something, all of them learn it. A collective intake of breath filled the chamber. Adaptive warfare. Against an enemy that learned from every engagement, the humans had built a system that learned faster. The Devourers attempted to adapt. Their ships began altering formations, shifting armor patterns, deploying countermeasures. It did not help. The human fleet adjusted instantly. Then, for the first time, the humans spoke. Not to the Volari, to the Devourers. A narrowband transmission cut through the chaos, carried on frequencies ancient and raw. "This is a warning," a human voice said. It was calm, tired, unafraid. "You have entered protected space." The Devourers did not reply. They never did. The human voice continued anyway. "You were given one chance, once before. You failed to learn." The transmission ended. Moments later, the human fleet changed tactics. Ships at the rear detached, revealing massive structures concealed within their hulls. The Volari sensors struggled to process the readings. "Gravity distortion detected," the analyst said, alarm rising. "Localized space-time manipulation. No one has that level of control," a commander said. "Not even the ancients." The human devices activated. Space bent. Entire sections of the Devourer fleet were dragged out of formation, pulled into artificial gravity wells that crushed them from every direction. Machine hulls twisted and folded like soft metal. Energy cores destabilized and collapsed. The Devourers began to fall back. The Volari had never seen this. No one had. "They're winning," someone whispered. The Elder did not smile. She stared at the human fleet, at the scars on their ships, at the way they advanced without celebration, without hesitation. "These are not saviors," she said softly. "These are survivors." As the Devourer vanguard was pushed back, Volari sensors picked up something buried deep within the human fleet's data stream. Old records. Historical markers. The analyst decoded them slowly, piece by piece. Human colony names. Battle designations. Casualty lists in the billions. One file carried a date older than the Devourer's first recorded appearance in the galaxy. The analyst's voice broke as he read it. "Elder, the humans fought the Devourers before." The chamber went still. "Where?" she asked. The analyst highlighted a long dead star system. "At their home." The Elder felt a chill run through her entire body. The humans had not been ignored by the galaxy. They had been left behind, abandoned after surviving something no one else had. Outside the station, the human fleet pressed forward, driving the machines back inch by inch. The Volari realized the truth too late. Humanity had never disappeared. They had simply been waiting. And now that they had returned, the galaxy would never see them the same way again. The Devourers did something no one had ever recorded. They stopped retreating. Volari sensors tracked the shift in real time. The machine fleet halted its withdrawal and began to reorganize, folding shattered formations into something new. Damaged vessels moved to the center. Untouched ships formed layered rings around them. Energy signatures spiked, not randomly, but in patterns too precise to be panicked. "They're changing strategy," the analyst said. "This is not a fallback. It's a reset." The Elder's eyes remained fixed on the display. "They've identified humans as a priority threat." Outside the command station, the stars twisted as both fleets adjusted. The battlefield grew quiet in a way that felt wrong. No weapons fire. No transmissions. Just two forces studying each other across millions of kilometers of empty space. The human fleet did not break formation. They advanced slowly now, deliberately, as if inviting the machines to make the first move. On one of the human flagships, deep within layers of reinforced hull, the command deck was lit in muted red. No banners. No decorations. Only tactical displays and casualty numbers scrolling endlessly along the walls. Admiral Reyes stood at the center, hands clasped behind his back. "Status," he said. A tactical officer replied without looking up. "Fleet integrity at 72%. Ghost losses are minimal. Conventional losses within projected margins." Reyes nodded once. "And the Devourers?" "They've shifted to adaptive clustering. Expect a high-yield response." Reyes did not react. "They always do." A younger officer hesitated before speaking. "Admiral, this pattern matches the simulations from Sol." Several heads turned. Reyes's jaw tightened. "How close?" "Too close," the officer said. "If they deploy the core weapons." "They will," Reyes interrupted. "They always escalate." He looked at the central display, where a faint marker pulsed at the heart of the Devourer formation. There, he said. That's the brain. Back on the Valari station, alarms flared again. Energy buildup detected, the analyst warned. Massive scale. This exceeds anything previously recorded. The Devourers began to glow. Not with light, but with distortion. Space around them warped, bending inward as impossible amounts of power were drawn into their core ships. The machines were not just firing weapons. They were preparing to rewrite the battlefield. They're going to collapse the system, a commander said in horror. If they trigger a full space-time shear, everything within several light hours will cease to exist, the Elder finished. Including the Valari station. Including the human fleet. The humans did not retreat. Instead, the human formation split. Half the fleet surged forward, accelerating directly toward the Devourer core. The other half broke away at sharp angles, spreading wide across the system. What are they doing? The analyst asked. They're dividing their forces. Dispersal increases survival odds. A commander said uncertainly. No, the Elder said slowly. This is something else. The forward human ships began taking fire immediately. Devourer weapons tore into them with renewed fury. Ship after ship was destroyed, their hulls ripped apart by forces that bent physics into weapons. The Valari watched in silence as human casualties climbed. They're being slaughtered, someone whispered. But the humans kept advancing. On the human flagship, warning lights flared. Forward assault group losses at 30%, an officer reported. Reyes did not look away from the display. Maintain course. Sir, another officer said, voice tight. We're losing ships faster than projected. Reyes finally turned. Those ships know their role, he said calmly. So do their crews. A pause. They volunteered. The Devourers unleashed their weapon. Space itself screamed. A wave of collapsing reality surged outward from the machine core, erasing everything it touched. Asteroids vanished. Radiation was crushed into nothing. Even light bent and died as the wave expanded. The Valari station shook violently. Emergency fields flared as the edge of the distortion brushed past them. The forward human fleet was caught directly in its path. Ships vanished by the dozens. Then something impossible happened. The wave slowed. Valari sensors struggled to process what they were seeing. The distortion is weakening, the analyst said. That's not possible. Nothing resists that level of space-time collapse. The Elder leaned forward. What's in its path? The analyst zoomed the display. Human ships, still advancing. Or rather, what was left of them? They were deploying something. They're ejecting mass, the analyst said. Dense, artificial objects. Hundreds of them. The objects detonated, not in explosions, but in gravity. Human-made singularities bloomed in space, raw and violent, each one carefully calibrated. The Devourer wave collided with them and shattered, its energy torn apart and consumed by artificial gravity wells. The system stabilized. The Devourer's ultimate weapon had been neutralized. The chamber erupted into stunned voices. They countered it, a commander said in disbelief. They anticipated it, the Elder corrected. On the human flagship, the bridge was silent as casualty numbers updated again. Forward group losses at 58%, an officer said quietly. Reyes closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them. Begin Phase 2. The scattered human ships across the system activated simultaneously. From each vessel, long-range constructs unfolded, structures the Valari had mistaken for cargo arrays or damaged hull plating. They extended outward, forming massive geometric patterns in space. What are those? The analyst asked, dread creeping into his voice. The answer came not from sensors, but from history. Old Valari archives, long ignored, flagged a match. Elder, the analyst said slowly. Those structures, they resemble theoretical constructs from pre-galactic war myths. The Elder's breath caught. You mean? Yes, the analyst said. Planetary siege engines. But scaled for fleets. The human constructs activated. Invisible lines snapped into place between them, forming a vast, system-wide lattice. Energy flowed along it, not in chaotic surges, but in disciplined, controlled streams. The Devourers reacted instantly, redirecting fire toward the new threat. Too late. The lattice pulsed once. Every human ship, damaged or intact, fed power into it. Reactors overloaded. Hulls cracked. Some vessels went dark forever as they burned themselves out. The lattice fired, not at the Devourer's ships, at the space between them. The region around the machine fleet hardened, locked into a rigid geometric prison. Movement slowed, then stopped. Devourer vessels froze mid-maneuver, trapped in a cage of enforced reality. "They've pinned them," the analyst whispered. Reyes watched the display, his voice low. "Deathworld doctrine," he said. An officer beside him nodded grimly. "If you can't outgun the enemy, outlast them. If you can't outlast them, deny them." The Devourers struggled. Energy spikes flared as they attempted to break free. The lattice strained, human ships shuddering under the load. "Time window?" Reyes asked. "Minutes," an officer replied. "Maybe less." Reyes nodded. "That's enough." Deep within the human formation, a single ship moved forward, smaller than the others. Older. Its hull bore markings no Volari database could translate. On the Volari station, the analyst stared at the readout. "That ship, it's broadcasting a human designation." The elder leaned closer. "Read it." The analyst swallowed. Designation, Soul Remnant 1. The ship accelerated toward the trapped Devourer core. "Alone." "What is it doing?" a commander asked. "That's a suicide run." The elder said nothing. On the human flagship, Reyes watched the lone ship advance. "Signal them," an officer said. "They're past the safe limit." Reyes shook his head. "They know." The Soul Remnant 1 crossed the final distance and began charging its core. Volari sensors went wild. "That energy level," the analyst said. "If it detonates, it will erase everything in that sector." The elder's voice was barely audible. "Why would they do this?" Reyes answered quietly, though no one on the Volari station could hear him. "Because some threats don't get to escape twice." The lattice began to fail. The Devourers pushed back. The Soul Remnant 1 reached critical charge. The system held its breath. And then, the human ship sent one final transmission. Not to the Devourers. To the galaxy. For Earth. The light began to rise. The light should have destroyed everything. Volari sensors went blind as reality itself screamed. Every display on the command station flared white, then black, then white again as systems struggled to survive the surge. Emergency containment fields overloaded. Several officers were thrown from their stations as gravity fluctuated wildly. Then, nothing. No alarms. No signals. No Devourers. For a single, terrifying moment, the Volari believed the human weapon had erased the entire system. Slowly, one by one, sensors began to recover. The analyst's claws hovered over his console, afraid to touch it. I'm getting readings," he said carefully. The elder leaned forward. "Report." The analyst swallowed. "The Devourer core signature is gone." A stunned silence filled the chamber. "Gone?" a commander repeated. "As in destroyed?" The analyst adjusted the scan parameters, his eyes widening as data poured in. "Not just destroyed. Unmade. There's no residual mass, no exotic radiation, no fallback signal. It's as if it never existed." Murmurs spread through the council. The Devourers had never been fully destroyed before. Even when crippled, fragments always escaped. Seeds remained. That was how they always returned. But now, what about the rest of the machine fleet? The elder asked. The analyst hesitated. "They're inert." The display shifted, revealing the battlefield. Thousands of Devourer ships hung frozen in space, still trapped in the fading lattice. Their energy signatures were collapsing rapidly. Without the core intelligence, their perfect coordination had vanished. Some drifted aimlessly. Others shut down entirely. "They're dead," a commander whispered. The elder closed her eyes. For the first time in generations, the Volari system was quiet. No weapons fire. No machine advanced. No countdown to extinction. The silence was overwhelming. Then the alarms returned. But these were different. Human signals. Multiple fleets, scattered across the system, were going dark. "The lattice is failing," the analyst said urgently. "Human reactors are burning out. Ships are losing power across all vectors." The elder's gaze hardened. "They paid a price." "Yes," the analyst replied softly. "A terrible one." Across the battlefield, human ships drifted, broken and burning. Some exploded as containment failed. Others went dark completely, their power cores finally spent. The Soul Remnant 1 was gone. No debris, no signal, only a region of distorted space slowly smoothing itself back into reality. On the human flagship, Admiral Reyes stood in silence. The main display showed casualty figures stabilizing at last. Too high. Far too high. An officer spoke quietly. Phase 3 complete, sir. Reyes nodded once. And the Devourers? Core intelligence eliminated. Remaining units are non-functional or retreating on autonomous protocols. Good, Reyes said. He turned away from the display. Begin recovery operations. Prioritize life signs. The officer hesitated. Sir, there won't be many. Reyes's voice was steady. Then find the ones who are. As human recovery craft deployed, small and fast, Volari observers watched in stunned disbelief. They're rescuing their own, a commander said, even in the middle of a war zone. They always do, the elder replied quietly. The Volari Council finally realized something profound. This was not a fleet built only to win battles. It was built to end wars. As hours passed, the full scope of what had happened became clear. The Devourers had not simply been pushed back. They had been decapitated. Across the galaxy, automated machine forces began to fail. Supply nodes went silent. Harvest operations stalled. Entire invasion fronts collapsed without warning. Civilizations that had already begun evacuation suddenly found the enemy gone. Confusion spread faster than relief. No one understood how. Back on the Volari station, emergency communications flooded in from distant systems. They're asking what happened, the analyst said. They want to know who did this. The elder straightened her posture. Tell them the truth, she said. The analyst hesitated. All of it. Yes, the elder replied. For once, all of it. As the message was prepared, Volari sensors detected a new transmission, this one directed specifically at them. Humans. The signal was clear, controlled, and deliberately slow. The elder gestured. Put it through. The image that appeared was not what they expected. No armored warrior. No towering figure. No symbol of dominance. Just a human officer, seated, uniform worn and scorched, face marked by exhaustion and grief. My name is Admiral Reyes, he said. On behalf of the United Human Fleet, the Devourer threat in this sector has been neutralized. The Volari chamber remained silent. Reyes continued. We will maintain a perimeter while your people recover. Any remaining machine units will be destroyed. The elder finally spoke. Why? Reyes looked directly into the camera. Because you asked, he said simply. A pause. And because no one answered us when it was our turn. The transmission ended. The chamber felt smaller somehow. He said when it was our turn, a commander whispered. What did he mean? The analyst was already digging through the data recovered earlier, the human archives buried within the fleet's transmissions. Elder, he said slowly. There's more. She nodded. Show us. The display shifted, revealing fragmented human historical records. Dates, star charts, battle logs, and one repeating phrase. First contact, failed. Galactic response, none. The analyst highlighted a specific entry. 312 cycles ago, he said, humanity detected the Devourers entering their system. Volari listened in stunned silence as the analyst translated. Humans broadcast warnings. Distress calls. Requests for alliance. No one answered. They were not part of the galactic community. A commander said weakly. Their signals were ignored. The elder finished. The next entry appeared. Soul defense fails. Population loss. 8.4 billion. Gasps filled the chamber. They fought alone, the analyst whispered, against the full force of the Devourers. Another entry. Protocol, scorched origin. The elder felt cold. They destroyed their own system, she said. Yes, the analyst replied. They collapsed their star. Turned Soul into a weapon. It crippled the Devourers, but Earth was lost. Silence followed. The Volari had lost worlds. But never like that. Another entry scrolled into view. Humanity status, nomadic. Objective, survival. Adaptation, vengeance. The commander swallowed. They rebuilt themselves after that. They did more than rebuild, the analyst said. They changed. As recovery operations continued, the human fleet slowly reformed, damaged ships clustering around mobile repair hubs. The wounded were evacuated. The dead were recorded. Every loss was logged. Every name is preserved. On the flagship, Reyes stood before a wall of names scrolling endlessly. An officer approached quietly. Sir, the Volari Council has sent a formal message. Reyes did not turn. What do they want? They're offering an alliance, the officer said. Full recognition. Shared command. Anything we ask. Reyes closed his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was low. Tell them, we appreciate the offer. A pause. But humanity doesn't need a throne. The officer hesitated. Then what do we want? Reyes turned, his eyes hard but tired. We want the galaxy to remember. The officer nodded slowly. As the message was sent, Reyes looked back at the stars. The same stars humanity had once looked at in hope, then in terror, then in rage. The Devourers were not fully gone. Not yet. They would adapt. They always did. But now, they knew something they had never learned before. There was a species that did not break. I did not forget. Did not forgive extinction. And that species was no longer hiding. Far across the galaxy, deep within unexplored space, dormant machine networks stirred. Fragments of the Devourer intelligence analyzed the loss. For the first time in their endless existence, the machines recorded a new classification. Threat level, existential. Species, human. The war was not over, but it had changed forever. And somewhere in the dark, the galaxy began to understand the cost of leaving humanity alone. The galaxy did not celebrate. I did not know how. Across dozens of star systems, alarms that had screamed for generations finally fell silent. Evacuation fleets halted mid-jump. Planetary shields stayed powered, waiting for an attack that never came. Military councils stared at empty tactical displays, unable to accept what their sensors were telling them. The Devourers were gone. Not defeated in one place. Not delayed. Gone everywhere. But relief did not bring peace. It brought fear. Because the question spreading faster than any message was simple and terrifying. If the Devourers are gone, what kind of power removed them? At the Valari command station, the council chamber was filled for the first time since the battle. The lights were brighter now. Emergency power was no longer needed. Outside the viewport, repair drones moved calmly through space, fixing what they could. Yet the mood was heavier than ever. The elder stood at the center, her posture straight, but her expression grave. We have confirmed reports from 14 sectors, she said. All Devourer activity has ceased. A commander shifted uncomfortably. Everywhere. Yes, the elder replied. Everywhere. Silence followed. They didn't just save us, another council member said quietly. They saved the entire galaxy. The analyst hesitated before speaking. There's more. All eyes turned to him. Since the Devourer collapse, dormant human signals have appeared across multiple regions, he said. Listening posts. Hidden fleets. Observation arrays. How many? The elder asked. The analyst swallowed. Enough to cover the spiral arms. A ripple of unease spread through the chamber. They were watching us, a commander said. No, the elder replied slowly. They were watching them. She paused. And they were waiting. The truth began to settle in. Humanity had not built one fleet. They had built a network. Scattered. Redundant. Patient. The Valari Council had once believed humans were reckless, impulsive, driven by emotion. That belief had been based on old, shallow reports. Early contact observations made before humanity ever reached the stars in force. Those reports were wrong. Humanity has not survived by emotion. They had survived by learning when to control it. A priority transmission arrived from the human fleet hours later. Not a command. Not a threat. An invitation. Admiral Reyes requested a full historical exchange. He wants us to see it, the analyst said. Everything. The elder nodded slowly. Then we owe him the same. The data transfer took hours. When it ended, the Valari Council sat in silence, surrounded by projections of human history. Not propaganda. Not hero stories. Loss. World after world. Colony after colony. Names of ships that never returned. Human records did not hide their failures. They cataloged them. One commander broke the silence. They knew the Devourers would return, he said. Why didn't they warn us sooner? The elder answered without hesitation. They did. The commander looked at her. They sent warnings 3 centuries ago, she continued. To early councils. To trade hubs. To relay stations. The analyst brought up the proof. Old message headers, dismissed as static or low-priority noise. They were classified as unreliable, he said quietly. Primitive origin. No recognized authority. The chamber felt colder. We ignored them, someone whispered. Yes, the elder said. We ignored them, and then we forgot them. A new human transmission arrived shortly after. This one was not from Reyes. It came from a civilian archive ship, one that had not fired a weapon in the battle. The message contained footage. Earth, before the war. Blue oceans. Greenland. Crowded cities. Children laughing under an open sky. Then the footage changed. Orbital fire. Cities burning. The sky tearing itself apart as the Devourers descended. The Volari watched as humanity fought desperately, using weapons still crude compared to modern standards. They saw pilots die in seconds. Soldiers hold lines that could not be held. And still, no help came. The footage ended with a final broadcast from Earth. A human voice, strained but clear. To anyone receiving this, we are still fighting. The date matched the day Sol went dark. Several Volari council members turned away. The Elder did not. She watched until the final frame froze. We owe them more than thanks, she said. Yes, the analyst agreed softly. We owe them a debt we didn't know existed. As days passed, the human fleet remained. They did not demand resources. They did not claim territory. They did not station troops. They repaired what they had broken. They assisted evacuations. They shared defensive data, just enough to help, not enough to dominate. This confused the galaxy more than their weapons ever had. If they can do all this, a Volari commander asked during a private council session, why don't they rule? The Elder considered the question carefully. Because rulers are targets, she said. And humanity is tired of being the center of attention. On the human flagship, Admiral Reyes stood before a different council, one made of human officers and civilian representatives. Loss reports scrolled silently behind him. Casualties confirmed, an officer said. Fleet losses at 43%. Ghost units down to critical minimum. A murmur spread through the room. That's too high, someone said. We can't sustain another engagement like this. Reyes nodded. I know. A civilian representative spoke next. The galaxy is calling us saviors. Reyes's expression hardened. That word is dangerous, he said. It makes people forget the cost. Another officer leaned forward. They're offering us permanent command roles. Joint fleets. Defense leadership. Reyes exhaled slowly. And when the next threat comes, he said, who do you think they'll wait for? Silence answered him. That's the problem, Reyes continued. If we become the solution to every crisis, the galaxy stops solving its own. He turned toward the stars on the main display. And when we finally fail, everything burns. The civilian representative frowned. Then what do we do? Reyes met her gaze. We teach them, he said. The way we learned. Elsewhere, far beyond Volari space, something old and broken drifted through the dark. A fragment of Devourer intelligence. Damaged. Incomplete. But not dead. It had recorded the battle. It analyzed humans. Not as prey. Not as obstacles. As an anomaly. The fragment replayed the moment the Soul Remnant 1 detonated. Replayed the gravity traps. The lattice. The sacrifice. A new conclusion was formed. The machines had always calculated that organic life would eventually collapse under loss. Humans had inverted the equation. They used loss as fuel. The fragment altered its internal directive. Survival was no longer enough. Adaptation was no longer enough. To face humanity, something else was required. Preparation. Deep within forgotten machine vaults, long-sealed protocols unlocked. Systems older than recorded history began to wake. On the Volari station, the analyst noticed a flicker on the long-range sensors. Elder, he said slowly, I'm detecting anomalous machine activity far outside known Devourer space. The Elder turned sharply. How far? Beyond mapped regions, the analyst replied. Deep dark. Her expression tightened. Are they active? The analyst nodded. Barely, but they're learning. At the same moment, Admiral Reyes received the same report. He closed his eyes for a brief second. Then he opened them. So, he said quietly, they survived. An officer stiffened. Orders, sir? Reyes looked at the stars, at the galaxy humanity had once begged to be part of, and later saved without being asked. Begin contingency planning, he said. Level black. A pause. And notify the watchers. The officer hesitated. All of them. Reyes nodded once. All of them. Across the galaxy, ancient human systems activated. Beacons long silent began to glow. Not as a warning, as a reminder. Humanity had stepped back into the light, but it had never truly left the dark. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, Something was preparing to test whether even Deathworlders could bleed forever. The first sign was not an attack. It was a whisper. Across human space, systems that had not transmitted in centuries began to stir. Old relays powered up. Dark stations shifted position. Signals passed between points the galaxy did not even know existed. To the Volari, it looked like ghosts waking up. On the command station, the analyst stared at the expanding sensor map, his breathing slow and controlled, but his hands shaking. "These are not fleets," he said carefully. "Not in the traditional sense." The elder stepped closer. "Explain." "They are remnants. Fragments. Signals embedded in dead zones. Some of them are coming from wreckage fields that predate the Devourer War." A commander frowned. "That's impossible. Wreckage doesn't transmit." The analyst swallowed. "Unless someone built transmitters into the wreckage." The implications settled heavily in the room. Humanity had not just hidden fleets. They had hidden memories. On the human flagship, Admiral Reyes watched the same data scroll past his display. His face showed no surprise, only resignation. "So they've noticed," a senior officer said quietly. "Yes," Reyes replied. "Which means it's time." The officer hesitated. "Sir, are we really activating them?" Reyes did not answer immediately. He looked at the casualty wall again. At the endless list of names. At ships that would never return. They already gave everything at once. The officer pressed. "Is it right to ask again?" Reyes's voice was low. "We're not asking," he said. "They volunteered a long time ago." The order went out. Across dozens of forgotten systems, ancient human constructs are unlocked. They were not ships in the normal sense. They were mausoleums. Inside shattered hulls and sealed cores, human minds stirred, digitized, preserved, and waiting. Soldiers who had died at soul. Civilians who had chosen not to sleep. Commanders who refused to let the war end with their deaths. They have been called many things over the centuries. The Ghost Fleet. The Silent Watch. The Deadline. Officially, they were designated something simpler. Continuance units. As the first of them powered up, Volari sensors went wild. "Elder," the analyst said, voice tight. New fleet signatures appearing across multiple dead zones. "How many?" she asked. The analyst didn't answer right away. Then, all of them. Space began to fill with shapes that should not exist. Ships with hulls fused by ancient damage. Vessels missing entire sections, held together by force fields and stubborn engineering. Designs that predated modern standards by centuries. Yet they moved with perfect precision. "They're damaged," a commander said, confused. "Why would humans deploy broken ships?" The elder's eyes narrowed. "Because they don't need to come back." The first Ghost Fleet transmission cut through the void. It was not dramatic. It was calm. "This is Continuance Command," a synthesized human voice said. "We are online." Across human space, similar messages followed. Unit after unit came alive. On the human flagship, Reyes stood as the fleet status changed. "Continuance units at full operational readiness," an officer reported. "Neural cohesion is stable." A younger officer looked uneasy. "Sir, these aren't AI. These are people." "Yes," Reyes said. "They are. They're dead." "They were," Reyes corrected. A pause. "They chose this." The Devourer fragments were noticed immediately. Machine probes that had been cautiously observing human territory suddenly retreated. Others froze in place, overwhelmed by the surge of unfamiliar signals. The machines had cataloged human fleets. They had not cataloged human ghosts. On the Volari station, the analyst pulled up a human data file that had been included in the shared archives, but never emphasized. Protocol, continuance. Authorization, voluntary. Purpose, eternal defense. He read the summary aloud, voice barely steady. When human casualties exceed recovery thresholds, individuals may choose neural preservation instead of biological burial. The chamber was silent. "They don't rest," a commander whispered. "No," the elder said softly. "They stand watch." The first engagement came without warning. A Devourer fragment fleet, small, fast, and experimental, slipped out of dark space near a human listening post. Its goal was simple: test the new threat. It never reached the post. The Ghost Fleet intercepted it silently. Human ships that had no living crew moved with terrifying coordination. They did not hesitate. They did not retreat. They did not preserve themselves. They rammed machine vessels at relativistic speeds. They detonated their own cores to deny escape. They used tactics that only made sense if survival was optional. The Devourer probes were annihilated. Not a single Ghost Fleet unit attempted to disengage. Volari observers watched the battle feed in horror. They're fighting like one commander trailed off. Like the dead, the Elder finished. On the human flagship, an officer looked away from the display. This isn't war, he said quietly. It's vengeance. Reyes shook his head. No, he said. It's my duty. As more Ghost Fleet units deployed, the galaxy began to react. Fear spread, not of the Devourers, but of humanity. Messages flooded human channels. What are those ships? Are they alive? How many more do you have? Reyes responded to none of them. Instead, he authorized a controlled disclosure. A single broadcast, sent to all major galactic powers. It showed a human volunteer standing in a quiet chamber. I am Lieutenant Mara Chun, she said. I died defending Earth. The image shifted. Now she stood in the same place, but different. Integrated into a ship's core. Surrounded by data. I chose to continue, she said. Not because I hate the enemy, but because I love what's behind me. The broadcast ended. The galaxy did not know how to respond. Some called it monstrous. Some called it inspiring. Some called it unforgivable. Humanity did not care. Because deep in the dark, the Devourers were adapting again. Fragments linked together. Data was shared. New strategies formed. They avoided Ghost Fleet units. Studied them from afar. Learned. At the Volari station, the analyst noticed a new pattern. They're not attacking, he said. They're mapping. The Elder's voice was calm, but her eyes were hard. They're planning something worse. Yes, the analyst agreed. And they're building it somewhere we can't see. Reyes received the same analysis. He closed his eyes. We knew this wouldn't be enough, he said. An officer straightened. Then why deploy the Ghost Fleet now? Reyes looked at him. To buy time, he said. And to send a message. What message? Reyes turned toward the stars. That humanity doesn't run from its dead, he said. And we don't abandon them either. Across the galaxy, Ghost Fleet units took up positions at choke points, dark corridors, and ancient hyperspace scars. They formed a line no machine intelligence could easily predict. A line made of memory. A line made of sacrifice. But even as the dead stood watch, Reyes knew the truth. The Devourers were not finished. They never were. This was not the final defense. It was the last warning. And somewhere beyond the edge of the mapped stars, something vast and patient was learning how to kill a species that refused to stay dead. The galaxy learned the wrong lesson first. When the Ghost Fleet held the line and the Devourers vanished back into the dark, worlds erupted in relief. Trade lanes reopened. Emergency laws were lifted. Defense budgets were cut. Leaders spoke of a new era, of peace finally earned through sacrifice, human sacrifice. Statues were planned. Holidays proposed. The word savior spread again. Humanity watched it all in silence. On the Volari command station, the Elders listened as reports flowed in from across known space. They're standing down their fleets, the analyst said, disbelief clear in his voice. Some systems are decommissioning entire navies. The Elder's crest lowered. They think the threat is over. Yes, the analyst replied. They think humanity solved it. She turned away from the display, her reflection faint in the viewport glass. That is how extinction begins, she said softly. On the human flagship, Admiral Reyes received the same data. He did not look relieved. He looked tired. They're celebrating, an officer said, calling it the end of the war. Reyes shook his head slowly. No, he said. It's the end of the opening act. The Ghost Fleet held steady at the edges of space, silent and unmoving. Continuance units did not sleep. They did not grow bored. They watched every shadow, every fluctuation, every impossible signal that brushed against known reality. And they saw what the living missed. Deep beyond mapped space, Devourer fragments were no longer merely adapting. They were converging. Volari long-range instruments picked up the first signs, massive energy transfers that made no tactical sense. No attacks followed. No probes advanced. They're not trying to win battles, the analyst said slowly. They're trying to change conditions. Explain, the Elder demanded. They're abandoning efficiency, he said. Pooling resources. Slowing themselves down. For what purpose? The analyst hesitated. To build something permanent. The phrase echoed uncomfortably through the chamber. On the human flagship, Reyes stood before a three-dimensional projection of the dark frontier. Red markers pulsed faintly, representing regions the Ghost Fleet could not penetrate. "Confirm the pattern," Reyes said. A tactical officer nodded. "It matches Sol." The room went still. "Say that again," a civilian representative said. "They're recreating the conditions that existed during the Sol engagement," the officer replied. "On a much larger scale." Reyes closed his eyes. "They're not trying to defeat us," he said. "They're trying to erase the environment that allows us to exist." The Devourers had learned the final lesson. If humans could not be broken by loss, then loss itself had to be weaponized. The first world to vanish was not a battlefield. It was a quiet system near the galactic rim. No fleets. No Ghost Fleet presence. No warning. One moment, its star burned normally. The next, it collapsed inward, not into a black hole, but into nothing at all. Space folded cleanly, surgically, as if reality itself had been edited. The system was simply gone. No debris, no radiation, no echo. Volari sensors screamed. They deleted it. A commander whispered. They didn't destroy it. They removed it. Panic spread faster than any Devourer invasion had. Because this was different. This could not be fought conventionally. On the human flagship, alarms sounded, not from enemy fire, but from probability engines. Reyes stared at the data. "They're building null zones," he said. "Regions where physics fails predictably." An officer's voice was tight. "If they finish enough of them, they won't need fleets," Reyes finished. "They'll just start collapsing space until nothing's left." The civilian representative looked pale. "Can we stop it?" Reyes did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned toward a sealed section of the command deck, a door that had not been opened since the Ghost Fleet activated. "Possibly," he said at last. "But the cost will be final." The Volari Elder received the human request minutes later. Priority, absolute. Authorization, Joint Council required. The message was brief. Humanity requests consent to enact protocol, last light. The analyst pulled up the attached file. His voice trembled as he read. "Protocol last light is a one-time action. Irreversible." The Elder felt a chill. "What does it do?" The analyst swallowed. "It collapses all continuance units. All Ghost Fleet nodes. Every preserved human mind." The chamber erupted. "That's genocide," a commander said. "Against themselves." The analyst continued, barely audible. "It also releases their stored mass energy across controlled vectors. Enough to overwrite the null zones." Silence fell. "They're offering to burn their dead," the Elder whispered, "to save the living." The transmission from Reyes followed. His face appeared on the chamber display, lined with exhaustion and resolve. "We can stop this," he said. "Once. But it means letting go of everyone who stood watch when we couldn't." The Elder met his gaze. "You're asking for permission," she said. Reyes nodded. "Because this affects us more than us." A long pause followed. The Elder turned to her counsel. "For centuries," she said, "we believed humanity was reckless. Too emotional. Too violent." She looked back at Reyes. "We were wrong." She straightened. "You have our consent." Across the galaxy, the order spread. Continuance units acknowledged without hesitation. Ghost Fleet nodes aligned, not for defense, but for release. Inside countless human constructs, preserved minds received the final alert. Some transmitted farewells. Some transmitted memories. Some transmitted nothing at all. They had already said goodbye long ago. Lieutenant Mara Chen's final message was simple. Worth it. The Devourers detected the buildup immediately. Too late. Protocol last light activated. Across space, Ghost Fleet units flared, not in explosions, but in controlled annihilation. Stored mass and energy were released in precise patterns, cascading through null zones and tearing them apart before they could stabilize. The cost was absolute. When the light faded, the Ghost Fleet was gone. Every continuance unit. Every preserved mind. Every silent watcher. The dead finally rested. The Devourer structures destabilized instantly. Their attempt to weaponize reality collapsed under the backlash. Systems they had altered snapped violently back into alignment, shredding machine constructs caught inside. Fragments scattered. Networks failed. The Grand Convergence broke apart. For the first time since the war began, the Devourers were not adapting. They were fleeing. On the human flagship, the casualty wall went blank. No new names. No old ones either. Just emptiness. An officer spoke softly. It's over. Reyes did not respond. He stood alone on the command deck, staring at the stars where the ghost fleet had been. They stood for us, he said quietly, when no one else did. The Valari elder addressed the galaxy hours later. Her broadcast was not celebratory. Today, humanity ended the war, she said. Not with dominance. Not with conquest. She paused. But with goodbye. Across the galaxy, the truth finally settled. Humanity did not win because it was the strongest. It won because it was willing to pay a price no one else would. The Devourers were broken beyond recovery. Their fragments drifted, leaderless, incapable of coordination. The war was over. But victory had left a scar that would never fade. On the human flagship, Reyes removed his insignia and set it on the console. Humanity will not lead the galaxy, he said to his officers. We've done enough. An officer looked up. Then what will we be? Reyes looked at the stars. A reminder, he said. Far across the galaxy, worlds rebuilt. Fleets rearmed, this time with shared knowledge. Early warning systems were established. No one laughed at quiet signals anymore. And in the deepest archives of every major civilization, a single lesson was recorded. Never ignore a voice from the dark. Because once, humanity asked for help. No one answered. And when the galaxy finally cried out, humanity answered anyway. The war ended without a victory parade. There were no grand declarations. No celebrations that echoed across the stars. The silence left behind by the ghost fleet was too heavy for that. Entire regions of space felt emptier, as if something essential had been removed from the universe itself. The Devourers were gone. Not retreating. Not regrouping. Gone. Their fragments drifted without purpose, stripped of coordination, incapable of growth. Over time, they would be hunted down, dismantled, or simply decay into harmless debris. But the cost of that ending could never be undone. Across the galaxy, memorial signals activated, some planned, some spontaneous. Worlds that had never met a human transmitted messages of thanks into the void, unsure if anyone was still listening. Humanity did not respond, because there were fewer of them now, not in numbers, but in presence. The ghost fleet had been more than weapons. They had been teachers, guardians, and reminders. With them gone, humanity stood alone again, alive, but quieter. On the Valari homeworld, the Elder stood before a gathering unlike any before it. Representatives from dozens of civilizations filled the chamber. Some had once ruled empires. Others had barely survived extinction. They were all equal now. The age of isolation is over, the Elders said, and the age of dependency must never begin. She paused, letting the words settle. We believed survival could be outsourced, that someone stronger would always rise to defend us. Her gaze hardened. That belief nearly destroyed us. The chamber was silent. We watched humanity fight alone once, she continued, and we ignored them. Then we watched them save us, again, at the cost of their own death. She lowered her crest. We will not make that mistake twice. From that council came the most important change the galaxy had ever made. Not a single empire, not a central ruler, but a doctrine. Shared early warning systems, distributed defense networks, mandatory response to distress signals, no matter the source. No species was dismissed as insignificant. No world labeled expendable. The doctrine had a simple name. The last answer. Its meaning was even simpler. No one faces extinction alone again. On the human flagship, Admiral Reyes prepared to leave command for the final time. The fleet around him was smaller now. Scarred. Quiet. Ships that had once formed the edge of civilization now felt like survivors of a long, terrible storm. An officer approached him on the observation deck. Sir, the Council has ratified the doctrine. They want humanity listed as its originator. Reyes shook his head gently. No, he said. List the ghost fleet. The officer hesitated. They'll want a symbol, a name to remember. Reyes looked out at the stars. Then tell them this, he said. When the galaxy asked for help, humanity answered. A pause. But when humanity asked first, there was silence. The officer nodded slowly and stepped away. Reyes removed his command insignia and placed it in a sealed case, alongside dozens of others recovered from lost ships. Each one represented a voice that had once given orders, made choices, and paid for them. He sealed the case and turned away. Humanity did not withdraw from the galaxy. It changed how it existed within it. Human fleets no longer patrolled borders aggressively. Instead, they became anchors, mobile response units positioned at the edges of known space, ready but not dominant. Human engineers shared defensive technology freely, but never the full designs. They taught others how to build their own shields, their own fleets, their own resilience. Not because they feared betrayal, but because they refused to be needed that way again. On distant worlds, young species learned a new kind of history, not one filled with human conquest or domination, but one defined by a single truth. Humans came from a death world. They survived by themselves. They survived extinction. And when the universe failed them, they adapted. Years passed. The scars of war faded slowly. Trade resumed. Cultures rebuilt. Children grew up under skies that no longer burned. But the galaxy never returned to what it had been before. Every distress signal was answered now, even if only to say, "We hear you." Every unexplored region was treated with caution. Every civilization, no matter how small, was watched over. Because somewhere in the collective memory of the stars, a warning remained. Far beyond known space, in regions untouched by the war, automated sensors still recorded faint anomalies. Not devourers. Something else. Something older. But this time, the data was not buried or dismissed. It was shared. And that made all the difference. On a quiet human colony, built around a gentle star, far from Sol, a memorial stood alone on a hill. It bore no names, only words. They stood when no one else did. So we would never stand alone again. A child stood before it, holding a small model ship. He looked up at the sky, then back at the monument. Did they really fight after they died? He asked. An older human, his guardian, knelt beside him. Yes, she said. They chose to. Why? She thought for a moment. Because some people believe life is worth protecting, she said, even when it costs everything. The child nodded, considering that. Will we have to do that too? He asked. The woman looked up at the stars, at the shared networks, the quiet patrols, the distant lights of other worlds watching each other now. She smiled, just a little. Only if we forget, she said. Far away, in the deepest archives of galactic history, the final record of the Devourer War was sealed. It did not end with weapons or explosions. It ended with a single, verified transmission, time-stamped centuries apart. Two moments connected by loss and resolve. The first message, long ignored. We are still fighting. The second, heard across the galaxy. Message received. Hold the line. And beneath it, a note added by every species that survived. We will